The Grave, a poem by Blair. Whilst some affect the sun and some the shade, some flee the city, some the hermitage, their aims as various as the roads they take. In journeying through life, the task be mine, to paint the gloomy horrors of the tomb, the appointed place of rendezvous where all these travellers meet. Thy succours I implore, eternal King, whose potent arm sustains the keys of hell and death. The grave, dread thing. Men shiver when thou'rt named. Nature appall'd shakes off her wonted firmness. Ah, how dark thy long extended realms and rueful wastes, where naught but silence reigns, and night, dark as was chaos ere the infant sun was rolled together, or had tried his beams, athwart the gloom profound. The sickly taper, by glimmering, through thy low-browed misty vaults, furr'd round with mouldy damps and ropy slime, lets fall a supernumerary horror, and only serves to make thy night more irksome. Well do I know thee by thy trusty yew, cheerless, unsocial plant, that loves to dwell mid skulls and coffins, epitaphs and worms, where light-heeled ghosts and visionary shades, beneath the wan cold moon, as fame reports, embodied thick, perform their mystic rounds. No other merriment, dull tree, is thine. See yonder hallowed fane, the pious work of names once famed, now dubious or forgot, and buried midst the wreck of things which were. There lie interred the more illustrious dead. The wind is up, hark how it howls. Methinks till now I never heard a sound so dreary. Doors creak and windows clap, and night's foul bird, rooked in the spire, screams loud. The gloomy aisles, black plastered and hung round with shreds of scutcheons and tattered coats of arms, send back the sound, laden with heavier airs, from the low vaults, the mansions of the dead. Roused from their slumbers, in grim array the grisly spectres rise, grin horrible, and obstinately sullen, pass and repass, hushed as the foot of night. Again the screech owl shrieks, ungracious sound, I'll hear no more, it makes one's blood run chill. Quite round the pile, a row of reverend elms, cohere near all with that, all ragged shoe, long lashed by the rude winds, some rift half down, their branchless trunks, others so thin atop that scarce two crows could lodge in the same tree. Strange things, the neighbours say, have happened here. Wild shrieks have issued from the hollow tombs. Dead men have come again and walked about, and the great bell has tolled, unrung, untouched. Such tales their cheer at wake or gossiping, when it draws near the witching time of night. Oft in the lone churchyard at night I've seen, by glimpse of moonshine checkering through the trees, the schoolboy, with his satchel in his hand, whistling aloud to bear his courage up, and lightly tripping o'er the long flat stones, with nettles skirted and with moss o'ergrown, that tell in homely phrase who lie below. Sudden he starts and hears, or thinks he hears, the sound of something purring at his heels. Full fast he flies and dares not look behind him, till out of breath he overtakes his fellows, who gather round and wonder at the tale of horrid apparition, tall and ghastly, that walks at dead of night, or takes his stand o'er some new opened grave, and strange to tell, he vanishes at crowing of the cock. The new-made widow, too, I've sometimes spied, sad sight, slow moving o'er the prostrate dead. Listless she crawls along in doleful black, while bursts of sorrow gush from either eye, fast falling down her now untasted cheek. Prone on the lowly grave of the dear man she drops, while busy meddling memory, in barbarous succession, musters up the past endearments of their softer hours, tenacious of its theme. Still she thinks she sees him, and indulging the fond thought, clings yet more closely to the senseless turf, nor heeds the passenger that looks that way. Invidious grave, how dost thou rend in sunder, whom love has knit and sympathy made one? A tie more stubborn, far than nature's band, friendship, mysterious cement of the soul, sweetener of life and solder of society. I owe thee much, thou hast deserved from me, far, far beyond what I can ever pay. Oft I have proved the labours of thy love, and the warm efforts of the gentle heart, anxious to please. Oh, when my friend and I in some thick wood had wandered heedless on, hid from the vulgar eye, and sat us down upon the sloping cowslip-covered bank, where the pure limpid stream has slid along, in grateful errors through the underwood, sweet murmuring, methought the shrill-tongued thrush mended his song of love. The sooty blackbird mellowed his pipe, and softened every note. The eglantines smelled sweeter, and the rose assumed a dye more deep, whilst every flower vied with its fellow plant in luxury of dress. Oh, then the longest summer's day seemed too much in haste. Still the full heart had not imparted half. 'Twas happiness too exquisite to last. Of joys departed, not to return. How painful the remembrance! Dull grave, thou spoil'st the dance of youthful blood, strikes out the dimple from the cheek of mirth, and every smirking feature from the face, branding our laughter with the name of madness. Where are the jesters now, the men of health, complexionally pleasant? Where the droll, whose very look and gesture was a joke to clapping theatres and shouting crowds, and made even thick-lipped musing melancholy to gather up her face into a smile before she was aware, are sullen now and dumb as the green turf that covers them? Where are the mighty thunderbolts of war, the Roman Caesars and the Grecian chiefs, the boast of story? Where the hot-brained youth, who the tiara his pleasure tore from kings, or then the discovered globe, and cried, forsooth, because his arm was hampered, and had not room enough to do its work? Alas, how slim, dishonourably slim, and crammed into a space we blush to name, proud royalty! How altered in thy looks, how blank thy features, and how wan thy hue! Son of the morning, whither art thou gone? Where hast thou hid thy many-spangled head, and the majestic menace of thine eyes? Felt from afar, pliant and powerless now, like new-born infant wound up in his swathes, or victim tumbled flat upon his back, that throbs beneath the sacrificer's knife, mute must thou bear the strife of little tongues, and coward insults of the base-born crowd, that grudge a privilege thou never hadst, but only hoped for in the peaceful grave, of being unmolested and alone. Arabia's gums and odoriferous drugs, and honours by the herald duly paid, in mode and form, even then to a very scruple. O cruel irony! These come too late, and only mock when they were meant to honour. Surely there's not a dungeon slave that's buried in the highway, unshrouded and uncoffined, but lies as soft and sleeps as sound as he. Sorry preeminence of high descent above the baser born to rot in state. But see, the well-plumed hearse comes nodding on, stately and slow, and properly attended by the whole sable tribe, that painful watch the sick man's door and live upon the dead, by letting out their persons by the hour, to mimic sorrow when the heart's not sad. How rich the trappings, now they're all unfoiled, and glittering in the sun. Triumphant entries of conquerors and coronation pomps, in glory scarce exceed. Great gluts of people retard the unwieldy show, whilst from the casements and housetops ranks behind ranks, close wedged, hang bellying over. But tell us, why this waste? Why this ado in earthing up a carcass that's fallen into disgrace, and in the nostrils smells horrible? Ye undertakers, tell us, midst all the gorgeous figures you exhibit, why is the principle concealed for which you make this mighty stir? 'Tis wisely done. What would offend the eye in a good picture, the painter cast discreetly into shades? Proud lineage, now how little thou appear'dst below the envy of the private man. Honour, that meddlesome officious ill, pursues thee e'en to death. Nor there stops short strange persecution, when the grave itself is no protection from rude sufferance. Absurd, to think to overreach the grave, and from the wreck of names to rescue ours. The best concerted schemes men lay for fame die fast away. Only themselves die faster. The far-famed sculptor and the laurelled bard, these bold insurances of deathless fame, supply their little feeble aids in vain. The tapering pyramid, the Egyptian's pride and wonder of the world, whose spiky top has wounded the thick cloud, and long outlived the angry shaking of the winter's storm, yet spent at last by the injuries of heaven, shattered with age and furrowed over with years, the mystic cone, with hieroglyphics crusted, at once gives way. O lamentable sight! the labour of whole ages lumbers down, a hideous and misshapen length of ruins. Sepulchral columns wrestle, but in vain, with all subduing time. Her cankering hand, with calm deliberate malice, wasteth them. Worn on the edge of days, the brass consumes, the busto moulders, and the deep-cut marble, unsteady to the steel, gives up its charge. Ambition, half convicted of her folly, hangs down the head and reddens at the tail. Hear all the mighty troublers of the earth, who swam to sovereign rule through seas of blood, the oppressive, sturdy, man-destroying villains who ravaged kingdoms and laid empires waste, and in a cruel wantonness of power, thinned states of half their people and gave up to want the rest. Now, like a storm that's spent, lie hushed and meanly sneak behind the covert. Vain thought, to hide them from the general scorn that haunts and dogs them like an injured ghost, implacable. Here too the petty tyrant, whose scant domains geographer ne'er noticed, and well for neighbouring grounds, of arm as short, who fixed his iron talons on the poor, and gripped them like some lordly beast of prey, deaf to the forceful cries of gnawing hunger, and piteous plaintive voice of misery, as if a slave were not a shred of nature, of the same common nature with his lord. Now tame and humble, like a child that's whipped, shakes hands with dust and calls the worm his kinsman, nor pleads his rank and birthright. Underground precedencies a jest, vassal and lord grossly familiar, side by side consume. When self-esteem or others' adulation would cunningly persuade us we were something above the common level of our kind, the grave gainsays the smooth-complexioned flattery, and with blunt truth acquaints us what we are. Beauty, thou pretty plaything, dear deceit, that steals so softly over the stripling's heart, and gives it a new pulse unknown before. The grave discredits thee. Why charms expunged, thy roses faded, and thy lilies soiled? What hast thou more to boast of? Will thy lovers flock round thee now, to gaze and do thee homage? Methinks I see thee with thy head low laid, whilst, surfeited upon thy damask cheek, the high-fed worm in lazy volumes rolled, riots, unscarred. For this was all thy caution, for this thy painful labours at thy glass, to improve those charms and keep them in repair, for which the spoiler thanks thee not. Foul feeder, coarse fare and carrion please thee full as well, and leave as keen a relish on the sense. Look how the fair one weeps, the conscious tears stand thick as dewdrops on the bells of flowers. Honest effusion, the swollen heart in vain works hard to put a gloss upon its distress. Strength too, thou surly and less gentle boast of those that loud laugh at the village ring. A fit of common sickness pulls thee down, with greater ease than ere thou didst the stripling that rashly dared thee to the unequal fight. What groan was that I heard, deep groan indeed, with anguish heavy laden? Let me trace it. From yonder bed it comes, where the strong man by stronger arm belaboured gasps for breath, like a hard-hunted beast. How his great heart beats thick, his roomy chest by far too scant to give the lungs full play. What now avail the strong-built, sinewy limbs and well-spread shoulders? See how he tugs for life and lays about him, mad with his pain. Eager he catches hold of what comes next to hand and grasps it hard, just like a creature drowning. Hideous sight. Oh, how his eyes stand out and stare full ghastly, while the distemper's rank and deadly venom shoots like a burning arrow across his bowels and drinks his marrow up. Heard you that groan? It was his last. See how the great Goliath, just like a child that brawled itself to rest, lies still. What mean'st thou then, O mighty boaster, to vaunt of nerves of thine? What means the bull, unconscious of its strength, to play the coward and flee before a feeble thing like man, that knowing well the slackness of his arm, trusts only in the well-invented knife? With study pale and midnight vigils spent, the star-surveying sage close to his eye applies the sight-invigorating tube, and travelling through the boundless length of space, marks well the courses of the far-seen orbs, that roll with regular confusion there, in ecstasy of thought. But ah, proud man, great heights are hazardous to the weak head. Soon, very soon, thy firmest footing fails, and down thou dropst into that darksome place, where nor device nor knowledge ever came. Here the tongue warrior lies, disabled now, disarmed, dishonoured, like a wretch that's gagged, and cannot tell his ails to passers-by. Great man of language, whence this mighty change, this dumb despair and drooping of the head? Though strong persuasion hung upon thy lip, and sly insinuations softer arts in ambush lay about thy flowing tongue, alas, how chopped fallen now! Thick mists and silence rest like a weary cloud upon thy breast, unceasing. Ah, where is the lifted arm, the strength of action, and the force of words, the well-turned period and the well-tuned voice, with all the lesser ornaments of phrase? Ah, fled forever, as if they ne'er had been, raised from the book of fame, or more provoking, perchance some hackneyed, hunger-bitten scribbler insults thy memory, and blots thy tomb with long flat narrative, or duller rhymes, with heavy halting pace that drawl along, enough to rouse a dead man into rage, and warm with red resentment the wan cheek. Here the great masters of the healing art, these mighty mock defrauders of the tomb, spite of their juleps and callithocons, resigned to fate. Proud Aesculapius' son, where are thy boasted implements of art, and all thy well-crammed magazines of health? Nor hill, nor vale, as far as ship could go, nor margin of the gravel-bottomed brook, escaped thy rifling hand. From stubborn shrubs thou wrung'st their shy retiring virtues out, and vexed them into the fire. Nor fly, nor insect, nor writhy snake escaped thy deep research. But why this apparatus, why this cost? Tell us, thou doughty keeper from the grave, where are thy recipes and cordials now, with a long list of vouchers for thy cures? Alas, thou speakst not. The bold impostor looks out, not more silly than when the cheat's found out. Here the lank-sided miser, worst of felons, who meanly stole discreditable shift from back and belly to their proper cheer, eased of a tax it irked the wretch to pay, to his own carcass now lies cheaply lodged by clamorous appetites no longer teased, nor tedious bills of charges and repairs. But where are his rents, his comings in? Aye, now you've made the rich man poor indeed, robbed of his gods. What has he left behind, O cursed lust of gold, when for thy sake the fool throws up his interest in both worlds, first starved in this, now damned in that to come? How shocking must thy summons be, O death, to him that is at ease in his possessions, who, counting upon long years of pleasure here, is quite unfurnished for that world to come. In that dread moment, how the frantic soul raves round the walls of her clay tenement, runs to each avenue and shrieks for help, but shrieks in vain. How wishfully she looks upon all she's leaving, how no longer hers. A little longer, yet a little longer, oh might she stay to wash away her stains and fit her for her passage. Mournful sight, her very eyes weep blood, and every groan she heaves is big with horror. But the foe, like a staunch murderer ready to his purpose, pursues her close through every lane of life, nor misses once the track, but presses on, till forced at last to the tremendous verge, at once she sinks to everlasting ruin. Sure, 'tis a serious thing to die. My soul, what a strange moment must it be when, thy journey's end, thou hast the gulf in view. That awful gulf, no mortal e'er repassed, to tell what's doing on the other side. Nature runs back and shudders at the sight, and every life-string bleeds at thoughts of parting. For part they must, body and soul must part. Fond couple, linked more close than wedded pair, that wings its way to its almighty source, the witness of its actions, now its judge, that drops into the dark and noisome grave, like a disabled picture of no use. If death were nothing, and naught after death, if when men died at once they ceased to be, returning to the barren womb of nothing, whence first they sprung, then might the debauchee and trembling mouth the heavens, then might the drunkard reel over his full bowl, and when 'tis drained, to fill up another to the brim and laugh at the poor bugbear death. Then might the wretch that's weary of the world and tired of life at once give each inquietude the slip, by stealing out of being when he pleased, and by what way, whether by hemp or steel, death's 1,000 doors stand open. Who could force the ill-pleased guest to sit out his full time, or blame him if he goes? Sure he does well that blames himself as timely as he can, when able. But if there's an hereafter, and that there is, conscience uninfluenced and suffered to speak out, tells every man, then it must be an awful thing to die, more horrid yet to die by one's own hand. Self-murder, name it not, our island's shame, that makes her the reproach of neighbouring states. Shall nature, swerving from her earliest dictate, self-preservation, fall by her own act? Forbid it, heaven, let not, upon disgust, the shameless hand be fully crimson with blood of its own lord. Dreadful attempt, just reeking from self-slaughter, in a rage to rush into the presence of our judge, as if we challenged him to do his worst, and mattered not his wrath. Unheard of tortures must be reserved for such. These herd together, the common damned shun their society, and look upon themselves as fiends less foul. Our time is fixed, and all our days are numbered. How long, how short, we know not, this we know. Duty requires we calmly wait the summons, nor dare to stir till heaven shall give permission, like sentries that must keep their destined stand, and wait the appointed hour till they're relieved. Those only are the brave that keep their ground, and keep it to the last. To run away is but a coward's trick, to run away from this world's ills, that at the very worst will soon blow o'er, thinking to mend ourselves by boldly venturing on a world unknown, and plunging headlong in the dark. 'Tis mad, no frenzy half so desperate as this. Tell us, ye dead, will none of you in pity to those you left behind disclose the secret? Oh, that some courteous ghost would blab it out, what 'tis you are, and we must shortly be. I've heard that souls departed have sometimes forewarned men of their death. 'Twas kindly done to knock and give the alarm. But what means this stinted charity? 'Tis but lame kindness that does its work by halves. Why might you not tell us what 'tis to die? Do the strict laws of your society forbid your speaking upon a point so nice? I'll ask no more. Sullen, like lamps in sepulchres, your shine enlightens but yourselves. Well, 'tis no matter, a very little time will clear up all, and make as learned as you are, and as close. Death's shafts fly thick. Here falls the village swain, and there his pampered lord, the cup goes round. And who so artful as to put it by? 'Tis long since death had the majority, yet strange the living lay it not to heart. See yonder maker of the dead man's bed, the sexton hoary-headed chronicle, of hard unmeaning face, down which ne'er stole a gentle tear, with mattock in his hand, digs through whole rows of kindred and acquaintance, by far his juniors. Scarce a skull's cast up, but well he knew its owner, and can tell some passage of his life. Thus hand in hand the sot has walked with death twice 20 years, and yet ne'er yonker on the green laughs louder, or clubs a smuttier tale, when drunkards meet. None sings a merrier catch, or lends a hand more willing to his cup. Poor wretch, he minds not that soon some trusty brother of the trade shall do for him what he has done for thousands. On this side and on that, men see their friends drop off like leaves in autumn, yet launch out into fantastic schemes, which the long-livers in the world's hale and undegenerate days could scarce have leisure for. Fools that we are, never to think of death and of ourselves at the same time, as if to learn to die were no concern of ours. Oh, more than sottish, for creatures of a day in gamesome mood, to frolic on eternity's dead brink. Unapprehensive, for aught we know, the very first swollen surge shall sweep us in. Think we or think we not, time hurries on with a resistless, unremitting stream, that treads more soft than e'er did midnight thief, that slides his hand under the miser's pillow, and carries off his prize. What is this world? What but a spacious burial field unwalled, strewed with death's spoils, the spoils of animals, savage and tame, and full of dead men's bones. The very turf on which we tread once lived, and we that live must lend our carcasses to cover our own offspring. In their turns they too must cover theirs. 'Tis here all meet, the shivering Icelander and sunburnt Moor, men of all climes that never met before, and of all creeds the Jew, the Turk, the Christian. Here the proud prince, and favourite yet prouder, his sovereign's keeper and the people's scourge, are huddled out of sight. Here lie abashed the great negotiators of the earth, and celebrated masters of the balance, deep read in stratagems and wiles of courts. Now vain their treaty skill, death scorns to treat. From here the o'erloaded slave flings down his burden from his galled shoulders, and when the stern tyrant, with all his guards and tools of power about him, is mediating new unheard of hardships, mocks his short arm, and quick as thought escapes, where tyrants vex not, and the weary rest. Here the warm lover, leaving the cool shade, the telltale echo and the babbling stream, time out of mind the favourite seats of love, fast by his gentle mistress lays him down, unblasted by foul tongue. Here friends and foes lie close, unmindful of their former feuds. The lawn-robed prelate and plain presbyter, erewhile that stood aloof as shy to meet, familiar mingle here like sister streams, that some rude interposing rock has split. Here is the large-limbed peasant, here the child of a span long that never saw the sun, nor pressed the nipple strangled in life's porch. Here is the mother with her sons and daughters, the barren wife and the long-demurring maid, whose lonely unappropriated sweets smiled like yon knot of cowslips on the cliff, not to be come at by the willing hand. Here are the prude severe and gay coquette, the sober widow and the young green virgin, cropped like a rose before 'tis fully blown, or half its worth disclosed. Strange medley here. Here garrulous old age winds up his tale, and jovial youth of lightsome vacant heart, whose every day was made of melody. Here's not the voice of mirth, the shrill-tongued shrew, meek as the turtle-dove forgets her chiding. Here are the wise, the generous and the brave, the just, the good, the worthless and profane, the downright clown and perfectly well-bred, the fool, the churl, the scoundrel and the mean, the supple statesman and the patriot stern, the wrecks of nations and the spoils of time, with all the lumber of 6,000 years. Poor man, how happy once in thy first state, when yet but warm from thy great Maker's hand, he stamped thee with his image, and well pleased, smiled on his last fair work. Then all was well. Sound was the body, and the soul serene, like two sweet instruments ne'er out of tune, that play their several parts. Nor head nor heart offered to ache, nor was there cause they should, for all was pure within. No fell remorse, nor anxious castings up of what might be, alarmed his peaceful bosom. Summer seas show not more smooth when kissed by southern winds, just ready to expire. Scarce importuned, the generous soil with a luxurious hand offered the various produce of the year, and everything most perfect in its kind. Blessed, thrice blessed days, but ah, how short! Blessed as the pleasing dreams of holy men, but fugitive like those and quickly gone. O slippery state of things! What sudden turns! What strange vicissitudes in the first leaf of man's sad history! Today most happy, and ere tomorrow's sun has set most abject. How scant the space between those vast extremes! Thus fared it with our sire. Not long he enjoyed his paradise. Scarce had the happy tenant of the fair spot due time to prove its sweets, or sum them up, when straight he must be gone, never to return again. And must he go? Can naught compound for the first dire offence of erring man? Like one that is condemned, fain would he trifle time with idle talk, and parley with his fate, but 'tis in vain. Not all the lavish odours of the place, offered in incense, can procure his pardon, or mitigate his doom. A mighty angel with flaming sword forbids his longer stay, and drives the loiterer forth, nor must he take one last and farewell round. At once he lost his glory and his God. If mortal now, and sorely maimed, no wonder man has sinned. Sick of his bliss and bent on new adventures, evil he would needs try, nor tried in vain. Dreadful experiment, destructive measure, where the worst thing could happen is success. Alas, too well he sped, the good he scorned, stalked off irreluctant, like an ill-used ghost, not to return, or, if it did, its visits like those of angels, short and far between, whilst the black demon, with his hell-scaped train, admitted once into its better room, grew loud and mutinous, nor would be gone, lording it o'er the man who now, too late, saw the rash error which he could not mend. An error fatal, not to him alone, but to his future sons, his future's heirs. Inglorious bondage, human nature groans beneath the vassalage so vile and cruel, and its vast body bleeds through every vein. What havoc hast thou made, foul monster, sin, greatest and first of ills, the fruitful parent and woes of all dimensions. But for thee sorrow had never been, all noxious thing of vilest nature. Other sorts of evils are kindly circumscribed and have their bounds. The fierce volcano from his burning entrails that belches molten stone and globes of fire, involved in pitchy clouds of smoke and stench, mars the adjacent fields for some leagues round, and there it stops. The big swollen inundation of mischief, more diffusive, raving loud, buries whole tracts of country, threatening more. But that too has its shore it cannot pass, more dreadful far than those. Sin has laid waste, not here and there a country, but a world, dispatching at a wide extended blow entire mankind, and for their sakes defacing a whole creation's beauty with rude hands, blasting the foodful grain and loaded branches, and marking all along its way with ruin. Accursed thing! Oh, where shall fancy find a proper name to call thee by, expressive of all thy horrors, pregnant womb of ills, of temper so transcendently malign, that toads of serpents and most deadly kind compared to thee are harmless. Sicknesses of every size and symptom, racking pains and bluest plagues are thine. See how the fiend profusely scatters the contagion round, whilst deep-mouthed slaughter, bellowing at her heels, wades deep in blood new spilt, yet for tomorrow shapes out new work of great uncommon daring, and inly pines till the dread blow is struck. But hold, I've gone too far, too much discovered, my father's nakedness and nature's shame. Here let me pause and drop an honest tear, one burst of filial duty and condolence. O'er all these ample deserts death has spread. This chaos of mankind, O great man-eater, whose every day is carnival, not sated yet, and heard of epicure without a fellow. The various gluttons do not always cram. Some intervals of abstinence are sought to edge the appetite. Thou seekest none. Methinks the countless swarms thou hast devoured, and thousands that each hour thou gobblest up, this, less than this, might gorge thee to the full, but rapacious still, thou gapest for more. Like one whole days defrauded of his meals, on whom lank hunger lays her skinny hand, and whets to keenest eagerness his cravings, as if diseases, massacres, and poison, famine, and war were not thy caterers. But know that thou must render up the dead, and with high interest too. They are not thine, but only in thy keeping for a season, till the great promised day of restitution, when loud diffusive sound from brazen trump of strong-lunged cherub shall alarm thy captives, and rouse the long, long sleepers into life, daylight, and liberty. Then must thy doors fly open and reveal the minds that lay long forming underground, in their dark cells immured, but now full ripe, and pure as silver from the crucible, that twice has stood the torture of the fire, and inquisition of the forge. We know the illustrious deliverer of mankind, the Son of God, thee foiled, him in thy power thou couldst not hold. Self-vigorous he rose, and shaking off thy fetters, soon retook those spoils his voluntary yielding lent, sure pledge of our releasement from thy thrall. Twice 20 days he sojourned here on earth, and shewed himself alive to chosen witnesses, by proofs so strong that the most slow assenting had not a scruple left. This having done, he mounted up to heaven. Methinks I see him climbing the aerial heights and glide along athwart the severing clouds. But the faint eye, flung backwards in the chase, soon drops its hold, disabled quite and jaded with pursuing. Heaven's portals wide expand to let him in, nor are his friends shut out. As a great prince, not for himself alone procures admission, but for his train. It was his royal will that where he is there should his followers be. Death only lies between, a gloomy path, made yet more gloomy by our coward fears. Nor yet untrod nor tedious, the fatigue will soon go off. Besides, there's no by-road to bliss. Then why, like ill-conditioned children, start we at transient hardships in the way that leads to purer air and softer skies and a never-setting sun? Fools that we are, we wish to be where our sweet sun-withering bloom, but straight our wish revoke and will not go. So I have seen upon a summer's even, fast by the rivulet's brink, a youngster play. How wishfully he looks to stem the tide, this moment resolute, next unresolved. At last he dips his foot, but as he dips his fierce redouble, and he runs away from the offensive stream, unmindful now of all the flowers that paint the further bank, and smiled so sweet of late. Thrice welcome death, that after many a painful bleeding step conducts us to our home and lands us safe on the long wished-for shore. Prodigious change. Our bane turned to a blessing. Death disarmed, loses its fellness quite, all thanks to him who scourged the venom out. Sure the last end of the good man is peace, how calm his exit. Night dews fall, not more gently to the ground, nor weary worn-out winds expire so soft. Behold him in the evening tide of life, a life well spent, whose early care it was his riper years should not upbraid his green. By unperceived degrees he wears away, yet like the sun seems larger at his setting. High in his faith and hopes, look how he reaches after the prize in view, and like a bird that's hampered, struggles hard to get away, whilst the glad gates of sight are wide expanded to let new glories in the first fair fruits of the fast-coming harvest. Then, oh then, each earth-born joy grows vile or disappears, shrunk to a thing of naught. Oh, how he longs to have his passport signed and be dismissed. 'Tis done, and now he's happy. The glad soul has not a wish uncrowned. Even the lag flesh rests too in hope of meeting once again its better half, never to sunder more, nor shall it hope in vain. The time draws on, when not a single spot of burial earth, whether on land or in the spacious sea, must give back its long-committed dust, inviolate. And faithfully shall these make up the full account, not least the atom, embezzled or mislaid of the whole tale. Each soul shall have a body ready furnished, and each shall have his own. Hence, ye profane, ask not how this can be. Sure, the same power that reared the piece at first and took it down can reassemble the loose scattered parts and put them as they were. Almighty God has done much more, nor is his arm impaired through length of days, and what he can he will. His faithfulness stands bound to see it done. When the dread trumpet sounds, the slumbering dust, not unattentive to the call, shall wake, and every joint possess its proper place, with a new elegance of form unknown to its first state. Nor shall the conscious soul mistake its partner, but amidst the crowd, singling its other half, into its arms shall rush with all the impatience of a man that's new come home, and having long been absent, with haste runs over every different room, in pain to see the whole. Thrice happy meeting, nor time nor death shall ever part them more. 'Tis but a night, a long and moonless night, we make the grave our bed, and then we are gone. Thus at the shut of even, the weary bird leaves the wide air, and in some lonely brake cowers down, and dozes till the dawn of day, then claps his well-fledged wings, and bears away. The end.